Alright, in this video we're going to show solving equations using multiplication and division, or maybe I could say solving one-step equations that involve multiplication and division. And I'm going to try my best to model some of these with algebra tiles, although there is a limitation to how helpful algebra tiles are depending on certain problems. The principles are still there. You could probably force the example if you wanted to. But some of these equations that we're going to work through, it's easier for students to see. It's more natural to use the algebra tiles than others. The purpose of the algebra tiles in the first place is to help you really understand the math concept, not to make sure that you are wonderful at algebra tiles. Okay, that's just a tool or a means to an end. So let's look at 3x equals negative 12. I'm going to represent the 3x just like this. Again, if you don't have algebra tiles, which I don't think that you do, and if you don't have colored pencils, which would be fine if you don't, you can represent this just by this, and you can represent the negative 12 by making negative 12 little squares like this, okay? But since I have the algebra tiles, I'm going to use them. So 3x equals negative 12. Okay, now also while I'm doing this, I know that some of you guys are very with it, and you can just look at some of these problems and know the answers already. But I'm going to encourage you that even if that's the case, even if you can kind of look at these and guess the right answers, or they just seem to like jump out at you, that you still learn the process of going through the steps to solve these. Because what's going to happen is this. Right now we're starting with one-step equations. Eventually we'll go to two and multi-step equations. And we're learning the methods and the limitations of what we can do, how we can manipulate both sides of these equations in order to arrive at the answer. And if you don't learn those steps and you don't learn those rules now, then when it gets more difficult and the problems have more parts to them, then you're not going to be able to look at just look at the equation and figure out the answer or guess the answer. And you're going to wish you had learned the steps right the first time. So please go ahead and make sure that you show all your work, you show the steps that we're showing, and then that way you can kind of lay the foundation for when this gets more complicated. So I have 3x over here and negative 12 over here. Okay, and I'm going to draw my line because I like to do that so that way I know that whatever I do to the left side, I have to do to the right side. And then I'm going to go even. You don't have to do this every time, but this is how I picture it in my head, right? This is a balanced equation right now. Somehow 3x equals negative 12. My goal is to find out what x by itself actually equals. So right now x is being multiplied by 3. So the inverse operation of multiply times 3 is divided by 3. And if I do it to the left side, I'm going to do it to the right side. That only seems that's what we have to do. So when 3x gets divided by 3, we have 3 parts here. And when 12 gets divided by, or negative 12 gets divided by 3, we can separate it like that. So now we have 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 of the original 3x. So 1/3 of that gives us a normal positive x. And over here would be negative 4. Look, what happens if we double it? 2x equals negative 8, 3x equals negative 12, 4x equals negative, what? 16, right? Still a balanced equation. Now we can check our answer. 3 and then x equals negative 12. I said, or I think that x equals negative 4. So I'm going to say 3. I'm going to substitute negative 4 in for x equals negative 12. I'm going to solve this, and I get negative 12 equals negative 12. This is correct. If for some reason I had negative 9 equals negative 12, then I would have to go back and see where I went wrong up here when I was actually solving the problem. Okay, let's do another one. Negative 2x equals positive 14. Negative 2x equals positive 14. I'm going to draw my line so I know to make sure that I do whatever I do to the left, I do to the right. Since x is being multiplied by negative 2, and I want to get x by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2. This will cancel, and I'll get x, 14 divided by negative 2 equals negative 7. Let me check my answer. Negative 2, and if I substitute negative 7 in for x, and I said that equals, 14. Negative 2 times negative 7 is 14, and that equals 14. So this one was the correct answer. X equals negative 7. Okay, how about a division one? Again, a little difficult for me to model this. Think of x divided by 2. Just picture, I don't know, maybe half of this x is gone, right? I only have a half of the x. I don't want to rip it in half, okay, so just picture it. Somehow, half of this x equals negative 5. Right? Because x divided by 2 is the same as 1/2 x, right? Half of this x equals negative 5. So how would I find out what x is? If half equals negative 5, the inverse operation of x, right? Same thing. 1/2 x and x divided by 2, same. So x divided by 2, the inverse operation is times 2. So if I have x divided by 2, I'm going to multiply both sides by positive 2. X divided by 2 times 2 just gives us an x. Negative 5 times 2 gives us negative 10. Does that make sense? Look, half of an x equals negative 5, then that means a full x should be negative 10, right? You can see how the scales are balanced. I hope that makes sense. Okay, let's do one more. Again, I think the titles falls short a little bit, but maybe you can picture it. X, this time I'm going to write it a little bit differently, but we're essentially doing the same thing. X divided by 4, same thing as 1/4 times x, right? The inverse operation of divided by 4 is times 4, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 4. This 4 and this 4, 4 over 1, right, cancels, and I get x equals 8. Is it correct? 8 over 4 equals 2. Well, 8 over 4, yep, that's 2 equals 2. That means this one was the correct answer. I hope that was helpful. I hope it wasn't too confusing for you, and I hope with practice we'll get good at this, and hopefully you know to go through all the steps. So I thank you for watching.